Okay, first and foremost, I want to apologize for this god-awful angle. It's just kind of hard because I'm on the ground. There's also an anthill about 5 feet to my right that I'm trying really hard not to make mad, so I don't want to move my phone over. But I'm going to try to stay as in fully frame as possible, but I can't stand because then the angle won't work. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm going to be going over how to start a fire, how to maintain one, how to put one out properly, just, you know, some of the basics. So starting off with materials, according to the University of South Carolina, there's 3 main ones that you need. They call this the fire triangle. So that consists of oxygen, heat, and fire. Obviously, oxygen all around us, not something you really need to gather. Heat can come from matches, it can come from flint and a rock. I personally just use a lighter for sake of ease. But I would also argue that there's 2 more really important materials that you need when making a fire, and I would say that that is water, which I would say is the most important, which you can see I left in frame right here. So you can see I do have it, just because you shouldn't really be starting a fire until you have a plan to responsibly take care of it and make sure that you can put it out. We don't have as big of an issue with it here as in some of the western states or some of the drier states, but definitely using proper safety precautions when having a fire is you don't start any fires, you don't injure anybody, and when you do put it out, making sure that it is completely out so it doesn't restart. So water, super important, and also kindling. So as Logwise Fire states, kindling is the base of a fire. Kindling can consist of quite literally anything that can catch fire. In this fire I'm using right now, I grabbed some pine needles from the ground around me. They're nice and dry and dead. I'll grab some I can show you. They're brown, they're not green, which is how you know. They're gonna be good kindling. Also, I'm a really big fan of sticks that you can obviously just pick off the ground again. They really shouldn't be bigger than your pinky finger, because if they're any bigger than that, then they're not gonna light, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of kindling, which is to have something as a base to light really easy, really fast, so that as it's burning, it catches the actual log itself on fire, so that fire can continue to burn. There's some different kinds of kindling you can go with. There's kindling that burns really hot and really fast, and there's also kindling that burns a little bit cooler and a little bit slower. I like to use a mixture of both. Like I said, pine needles burn really hot and really fast. So the pros of that are because it burns really hot, it gives it a better chance of the logs catching fire. But because it burns so fast, you have to keep adding a lot on in order to get that fire started. So I like to couple it with something like sticks, which are a little bit harder to catch on fire. But they do end up, once they do catch, they do burn for a good period of time. I'm getting smoke on my face, sorry. You probably really shouldn't sit this close to a fire, but for video's sake, this is what I'm doing. So yeah, different kinds of fire are super important. Creates the base of the fire. You can also use stuff in a pinch for emergency kindling. Paper is a really big one you can use. Even if you have like a really high volume alcohol spray perfume, it's not great for the environment, but I know here a lot of us carry around like vanilla perfume, really cheap stuff, because the gnats hate it. So we spray it all over ourselves. So that can even work to kind of stoke the flames a little bit to get it started. So once you have your fire started, or I guess, no, not once you have your fire started, once you have all your materials gathered, you need to figure out what kind of shape you're gonna go with. So right here, it's hard to see, but I do have a log cabin built. So it kind of just looks like a Jenga, 2 on bottom, 2 on top, and you can keep throwing logs on it that way. You can do that, or the other really common one is the cone or the teepee kind that just kind of stands up like this. Tim Emmett Outdoor Life, essentially the only difference between the two is that in a teepee style, there's less air filtration through it, so the coals do tend to stay hot a little bit longer, the coals being the little red parts down there that you can't really see because of my awful camera angle. But yeah, other than that, it really just comes down to preference. I do prefer the log cabin just because if you're cooking food, it's easier to place something onto. In my opinion, it's easier to maintain because you don't have to worry so much about log placement. You can just slap another log right on top, and as you build it up, it'll kind of fall, and you can readjust that as you need to. So yeah, again, I really prefer the log cabin, but it's really up to user discretion. So once you have that started, that fire started, really all you need to do is continue to maintain it like I have. Just throwing sticks on it from time to time, throwing kindling on it if you need to. You can even throw a log on there as it starts to dwell out. Like if I wanted to keep this going, I'd probably throw another log on, but because it's just for the sake of the video, I'm gonna let it burn out. You can also tell it's burning out because it's starting to smoke, which means it's running through a lot of those baser materials. So yeah, I guess the last step of this really is just putting out the fire. which I actually am going to do on camera because that's something I can do super fast and super easy. So I have a lot of water with me. I also have my water bottle behind me if this isn't enough. But essentially when you're putting out a fire, the U.S. Department of Agriculture really just recommends that everything needs to be wet. Like I said, a lot of times out west, if you put something out and even if the coals all go dark, like there's none lighting up, they can still relight if it's smoking because there's still heat trapped in those coals. So you really want to get in there and move stuff around and make sure that you're not going to be at risk of restarting a fire. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. It's going to smoke like crazy and you might not be able to see me, but I thought that would be kind of cool. So the main part of the fire is out right now. I'm just going to start kicking stuff over though. Really mix water in with all the coals in the bottom. Separate the logs as much as possible. But also keep them in the little makeshift pit I have so they don't start anything else on fire. So you can kind of see it's still steaming, which means that I do need to keep, put more water on it. So I'm gonna do that with my water bottle, and then at that point, I'm probably gonna have to go get more water because it's not responsible to leave a fire still steaming. Puts everybody at risk, puts the forest at risk. It also puts people who come by and might think it's not as hot as it actually is at risk. So that is really all for starting a fire, keeping it going, and practicing proper safety measures.